I'm going to use a prayer from, and pardon me if I butcher the name, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, a 20th century priest, who prayed this: "Since once again, Lord, I have neither bread nor wine nor altar, I will raise myself beyond these symbols up to the pure majesty of the real itself. I, your priest, will make the whole earth my altar, and on it will offer you all the labors and suffering of the world. Amen."
Amen.
Just one more thing. How many of you heard Father Will's sermon this morning? Y'all can go home. That pretty much goes. But before you go, if you chose to go, that was almost like I could say amen and drop the mic moment. Father Ryan has got some housekeeping to do, because as it comes to confirmation and reception and baptism and all those other things, we want to make sure we know what everybody wants to do. So I'm going to turn it over to Father Ryan.
So I know y'all all seen the sign-up sheets several times on the clipboard that'll be passed around. We're doing it again, but this time what is on here is actually a compilation from all those miscellaneous sheets in the past that should, I repeat, should have your name if you're undergoing one of the rites of initiation: confirmation, baptism, reception, or reaffirmation. It should be on this paper with your name. If you have a sponsor, it should be there. So please just look this over and make sure that what it says is correct. If for some reason you're not on here, please do put your information below this. One other thing is that you'll understand that we have a lot going on Easter Sunday with all of you getting confirmed, etc. Plus the bishop's visit. Plus, it's Easter. So there's a lot going on. We're going to have a rehearsal that Saturday before, Holy Saturday. That's April 16th. The rehearsal will be at 10 a.m. So if you're one of those people who is getting confirmed, yada, 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 please do make every effort to be there. And bonus points if you can convince your sponsor to show up too. All right, so this is being passed around, and just double check this and fill in as needed. Thank you.
All right. Any questions for Ryan or Father Will before we jump in?
What's reception?
Reception is the rite that is designed for someone who has been confirmed in another tradition and wants to mark their entrance into the Episcopal Church.
If there's a situation, we got a service for it. Well, first of all, welcome. I am glad, and I know that Father Ryan and Father Will are glad too, that you are hanging on or hanging in with all the complexity that is this Episcopal Church. And as a deacon in the church, I have a unique dual role to play. The most visible that you all see every Sunday is what you see when I proclaim the gospel, bid the congregation to join me in the confession of sin, set and clear the table, and then finally dismiss the congregation. That's when the real work is supposed to begin. That's when we are to go out in the world and do what we have prayed about and thought about and encouraged ourselves to do in the service. The less visible role, but equally important, is also twofold, and it is an ancient role for deacons. It's been carried out in one form or another since the earliest days of the church, when every church didn't have a rector, every church had a bishop, and there was usually one church in the city and So the bishop, and as those congregations grew, the bishop relied on the deacons. Priests weren't much of a thing at this point. They were there, but they weren't much of a thing. So said the deacon. So in those days, the deacons carried food and support to the poorest among them, the widows, those that had been incarcerated, and all those other kinds of things. And I actually am not a member of this church. I know that's hard to believe. You see me here every Sunday, you would think I'm a member. I am not. I work under the supervision of the bishop. Now, a lot of that is handed off to Will, and so I really work with Will, with Ryan, but technically, I cannot be a member of this church because I am a member of the diocese. I am a deacon in the diocese and can go wherever the bishop decides to send me. So if one day you see me not here, specifically at my ordination, deacons are called to interpret to the church, and basically to the bishop and the church here, the needs and concerns and hopes of the world. And at all times my life and teaching are to show Christ's people that in serving the helpless, they are serving Christ themselves. So that's what a deacon is supposed to do. And I am still figuring out how to be out best in the world as best I can and where I need to be. Because as much as I might want to be everywhere, fixing everything and everybody, it's just not possible. Further along in our examination, the bishop asked the candidate, the deacon, to be, will you look for Christ in all others, being ready to help and serve those in need? The modern term is marginalized population. Those are the outcasts, the folks that don't fit neatly into a category within the world and in society. So those are the kinds of folks where I am to direct my energy. But I'm not supposed to do it alone. Now the world's a pretty darn big place, and for one deacon to have responsibility for so much, so thank goodness there are deacons all over the world in many faith traditions to share the workload. And more importantly, there are the people of the church to share that responsibility and to be out into the world. And guess what? You all are called in almost the same way to do exactly the same thing. In their baptismal covenant puts it this way: will you seek and serve Christ in all persons, loving your neighbor as yourself? And your answer, hopefully, will be, I will with God's help. So, what does that promise look like? That's a mighty big promise. And what does it really mean to reach out and serve others? Now, as you all might expect, since I'm sitting here, I have some thoughts on the subject. But rather than simply tell you what I think, I'm going to ask you some questions about the nature and scope of outreach and service. The good news is you don't have to answer out loud if you don't want to. The bad news is, at some point in your journey in Christ, you really need to confront yourself with these questions and form your own answers. Hopefully, they are educated answers. And maybe faith-generated answers. But before I put the question to you, I'm going to bring up a concept. And the concept is transformational service. Anybody got a clue? Or a guess? What transformational service might be?
Does that mean it transfers from your ideals to help us, guide us to where we should give service?
That's part of it.
That it changes you or the person you're serving? It's
Is it,
like
is
a
it
two-way
or is it and?
street.
And.
Well, that's, yeah, and or.
That's it. Okay, so I don't have to teach this because y'all got transformational service down.
You
I'm
can't
going-
always guarantee it
Don't
changes
worry.
the other person.
No, you never know. And you don't know if it's going to change you either.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there is a lot to think about. As you might think, I've got a few more notes on the idea. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, and yes, I stole a little bit from them, put it this way. We can sometimes have a tendency to view service projects as isolated events that start upon arrival at the service site and end upon exit. I come, I bag some food, I hand it out, I go home. Easy peasy, job done. This tendency can mean a missed opportunity to make service truly transformational for both those who serve and for those served. And I think that's a nice definition. There should be some change in you. Maybe it's, oh my gosh, that person is more like me than I ever thought. Or I never knew that was something in the world and something that I need to look for and acknowledge. And like I said, if you heard Father Will's sermon this morning, and for those of you who haven't, you will hear it again this afternoon at 10:30.
I don't even remember what I said.
He doesn't remember what he said, but I do. Because that's what deacons do. We remember stuff. And then bug people to death about them. The bishops, because bishops don't make a short little statement like that and then leave it up to you all to figure out what it is, they recommend a process. A spiritual process, I hope, but a process nonetheless that calls you to, number one, act, pick a project or whatever, to reflect, and then transform. The process asks you to first act. Insert yourself into opportunities to do something, face to face, if possible. Now, who's got examples for me? It's going to be a short class if nobody has examples.
Deb's got one.
Oh,
I volunteer regularly at the Smith Medical Clinic, and it's an opportunity to greet people, share people, help people in ways far beyond the medical aspects that they're seeking. And it's a place where people are treated with dignity and respect. And when I come from the Northern Virginia area, where people that were in need were not always treated with dignity and respect.
and I suspect that's probably happened down here some too.
I imagine that at the Smith Clinic, it's better than I've ever seen it.
Any other examples?
Stephen Ministry.
Stephen Ministry, walking with people who are hurting, helping them to find healing. And you can describe it better than I probably.
Not really, but
Give it a
I was
shot.
a Stephen minister, but in a different denomination. But yeah, you're assigned to a person who is in trouble or grieving or have health issues or substance abuse, whatever, and you're there for them to listen. It's a listening ministry.
And occasionally to share probably also.
Yes.
I know my grandson, one of my grandsons, was struggling mightily, and Stephen minister, because I was his grandfather. Stuff that came from me was but when it came from when a Stephen minister, somebody that didn't know him very well, started walking with him, there was a whole change. And I never interfered. I didn't ask what was going on, what they talked about, or anything else. Because that was between the Stephen minister and my grandson, Alex.
It's a very private.
And tell me, did it touch your heart? Did it change your heart a little bit?
I suppose it did, yeah.
Okay. That's the kind of example of transformational ministries and service that we're talking about. And even if you do go to the food pantry and you bag groceries and you hand them out, I'll bet as you meet people where they are, there is some transformation going on, even if you don't see it. Now, not everything that we do can be truly transformational every day. But it does happen as you go along. Now, as part of this step, you may choose a project, and this is what Stephen ministers in particular do, and you do at the Smith Clinic as well, I think, that leads to empowerment. It leads to somebody, it's the old saying, you can give a guy a fish and he'll eat for a day, but if you teach him how to fish, he'll eat forever, for the rest of his life anyway. And that, in leading folks to empower folks, it's an emphasis on doing with and walking alongside rather than doing for the people. And along with their doing, there should be time for being with those served. Now, what might this step look like? I think the Stephen ministry example, I hate to keep coming back to it, but it's a very good example. And maybe the folks at Smith Medical Clinic, as they get to know one of their clients coming in over and over, they begin to learn more than just about the medical. And maybe they can see changes in somebody deciding that maybe they are worth caring for, either by themselves or by others. And so they start to find better health measures for themselves. Deb?
We have had a number of our patients become volunteers. As their lives have been healed in many ways, medically and emotionally, they felt like they want to give back.
So they're paying it forward. That's transformational service. Next, they recommend. Oh, Jack, sorry.
This building was a church and a school, and it was for African Americans and completely excluded from all other things. And Ms. Rubin, you know, we don't know how many people she actually trained, but it was quite a large number. And they then transformed things thereafter. And then they welcomed all of us when our church was taken from us.
So it's in the DNA of this place. Transformational service. It's in the DNA of this place. Next, the bishops ask you to reflect. These are the why questions. And should first be, I think, rooted in prayer. Do I want to do this? Can I do this? Lord, give me the strength to do this. Why is this happening in my community? And what can I do about it? Do y'all have other questions that might come to mind as this brings up? Boy, I'm really hitting it on all cylinders, right?
I can offer something to that. I think that after we moved down here and I started the job, and the job was really intensifying, I really wasn't finding my place. And I started looking for another job. I'm a nurse. And Lori wisely pointed me in the direction of rehabilitation. Not drug rehabilitation, but physical rehabilitation. And so now I work at Encompass, excuse me, up in Waccamaw, 4th floor. And it has been enlightening. Sorry, I got a frog in my throat this morning from my allergies, I can't help it. But it's been a great experience. It's been very enlightening, and I see a lot of transformation in myself. Because the people I'm helping come there with really some very serious situations, like everything from stroke to car accidents, and we're trying to get them back on their feet. And a lot of them don't have hope. So I try to not just pass medications. I have learned that in this job, this particular job, that my hope in giving them everything I can give them of myself has made a transformation for them as well. And so that paying it forward, that transformation part, and praying on it, which I have done a lot, has made such a difference. Such a difference. So.
That's beautifully said. Absolutely. Finally, it's that transformation, and that's what you've talked about. You probably found strength you didn't know you had.
Yep.
You have seen the light of Christ in people that you weren't quite sure about at first when they walked in the door,
They
maybe.
weren't quite sure of me either.
And they and those same bishops contend that the ideal service project be paired with opportunities for advocacy and efforts to transform. Feed Georgetown, the Baskerville Food Pantry, all the other projects that seek to feed people are really looking to do more, to help folks find a way out of that cycle of poverty and pain and isolation and hopelessness, and to transform unjust structures.
I think Miss Ruby's Kids does that for children.
Yeah.
You know, it may not be monetary, but it's helping kids learn to read properly and interact properly.
And what a life-changing skill that is.
Yeah.
And helping parents to learn how to help their children.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't want to pass by without mentioning
Miss Ruby's Kids.
At the community garden, we just don't, like I volunteer down there, they don't just hand it out, like they're teaching them how to grow their own. Like each week there's a different group comes and they make like special needs children that they made them plant, harvest. They went through the whole process with them and they all left with things that they could go home and plant. So it's
Again,
just giving it out.
transformational. Something that they probably never thought they could do or even wanted to do or should do.
And they were all so excited. Yeah.
Would the Flower Guild fall under that? Because we have gotten together as a group, we've all become friends, a wonderful group of people. When I'm there doing the flowers, I'm close to my father because he taught me. And I think it transforms the church into beauty for everybody on Sunday.
Well, and you send flowers home to people and we have flowers, to brighten their day and bring the church to their house.
I don't know what these other two guys would say, but I'd say amen and amen.
Well, and then you think it can't get any better, and then you look up on a Sunday and you think, well, doggone, it is. You know, it is just marvelous, and it's not a canned arrangement like I see someplace. It's like
And you never
love.
know who's going to come
Yeah.
into that church and be inspired or
Yes.
lifted up with the beauty of those flowers and the flowers all over this campus and the beauty of this campus and all the people who have worked to do that.
Well, you can bet your life that everybody on that flower guild, when we walk in that room, the first thing we do is look up and say, okay, God, here we go.
And just wait till you walk into church on Easter morning.
Yeah. I can't even think about that yet.
I think too, it did give us the opportunity with the flower guild to do those arrangements in memory of someone.
Absolutely,
And-
and I do,
And then
my father.
transformational for, I've been able to do that for my, my parents on their birthday, on special occasions. So it's like, it just gives, it is transformational.
It's like I feel there's two chairs there watching me. There's God and there's my dad. And he's telling me, no, don't do that. Don't do that.
So you're walking with your dad.
Did you do them this week, Lenny?
What?
Did you do them this week?
No.
Because those bird feeders and birds are so sweet.
Yes,
There is a
ma'am.
ministry that we live at the Lakes at Litchfield. We've been there now for 2.5 years. We came in just as COVID began. And this church, and I'm sure most people know, offers a healing service on Wednesdays every week and organizes it. And both pastors or priests are there. And Walt, my husband, retired, fills in on the 5th week.
And whenever we can't be there.
Whenever you
And
can.
we are eternally grateful, sir.
But that makes a big difference to the people who are there. They're not all Episcopalians, they're Catholics, they're everything. And when COVID hit hard and we were closed to anybody coming in, Walt took over. I was the altar guild. Every week we had different flowers and candles, and we really made it church. It was every denomination there, and some who never even put their foot in a church, but they were needing something. And so it's a ministry that continues, and I feel like, it's something that you all do. And it's not just the priests, but for those of us who are part of this church now, it really means a lot to see how.
And have you felt transformed by just doing this?
Absolutely, absolutely. And we carry it forth in other ways. So, thank you.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here and call on somebody. I don't know that we've ever done that. Emma Rose, what about acolyting? Do you see that as a ministry that can be transforming?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, when, like, we have our training and stuff, and like, I see the younger kids come out and do it as well. Not just me, and then I look in the little acolyte room and I see like the pictures from when Sarah, Rue, and I were like really, really little. And like the cross was almost too heavy. And now we're all grown up and we still do it.
Do you feel like there's, in that service, has there been transformation for you? Good.
And children grow from weed, crazy, awkward little kids to incredible young men and young women. It's a privilege.
Well, we thank you for your service, number one. That phrase has gotten so hackneyed, I know. So what about opportunities for advocacy and efforts to transform unjust structures? Has anybody been in the midst of any of that?
Sacred ground.
Family Justice Center.
Yeah.
Perfect. The Family Justice Center. Lots of transformation going on there. And I was fortunate to be on the Domestic Violence Safety Audit Team in Knoxville, Tennessee, looking at the process from that first call to 911 all the way through the process, the court hearings, the injunctions, the restraining orders, and all of that, to the houses that house the women and children, and all of that, and how we could make that safer and more inclusive, open to all, and encourage folks. And believe me, it transformed me, because I never realized the strength and the love that was generated from these very broken people that were striving to find something better, and oftentimes didn't believe they deserved it. And when you finally have a woman stand up and say, I am a child of God and I deserve to be loved, truly loved. And I now have, because I know that, I have love to give. That is, if you're not moved by that, if you're not changed by that, then you ain't going to be changed. It's going to be awfully difficult. I spent some time as the executive director of the Tennessee Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. And the idea was to look at structures that prevented justice from happening in the court system. Too often the court system is better known as the legal system, not the justice system. And so wherever we could make inroads and encourage change with better treatment of those who are released on parole or on probation, in a more treatment, or we used to say that most of the programs that worked with high-risk parolees and probationers were nothing more than trail, nail, and jail. You know they're going to do something bad, so you watch them. When they do something bad, you put them in jail, and then you send them back to prison. That was the whole look of it. Finally, with the Second Chance Act that was passed by Congress many years ago, they started to make a difference in creating public safety collaboratives across the state of Tennessee. And I was fortunate to be the head of the Knoxville Public Safety Collaborative. And for the first time, we had police officers, social workers, mental health professionals sitting down most of the time with the person who was released from prison, the formerly incarcerated, and saying, what can we do to help you be successful? What skills do you have that you don't know you have? We're going to help you find those skills. Because frankly, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, you know, today would be a good day for me to become a criminal. Or any other kind of marginalized population. And we had all kinds. And working with, especially with men who decided at some point, I want to reclaim my fatherhood. I want to be the father to my children that my father wasn't to me. Wow. If that doesn't transform me, I don't know what does. So I taught a responsible fatherhood class in the Knox County Jail. And at the end of the day, we had two fathers who regained custody of their children. Doesn't sound like a lot, but that was two more children that were not going to be in the foster care system, that were not going to be living with a drug-addicted mother or a grandparent that was way too old to try and take care of them. So it was empowering those young men to be fathers. And that class was voluntary. And the one question I never asked, ever, is when they came to the class and we were introducing themselves, I never asked, what are you in for? Never asked it. It didn't matter. It was somebody seeking guidance to transform their role as a father. And in watching them do that, struggling with the difference between punishment and discipline, sounds like a simple concept, but it is not, for somebody who was always beaten into trying to do the right thing, beaten into doing the right thing, rather than taught how to do the right thing. It's amazing. And I was a juvenile probation officer before that and tried to do the same thing. More often I had better luck with the children than I did with their parents. But that's a whole nother story. We'll save that for a sermon down the road maybe sometime. But looking at those unjust structures, and it's hard to put yourself out there in a protest or in a project that very few people want to see succeed. There are those kinds of projects out there where folks say, yeah, you all go and do that and good luck to you, and they really don't want it to succeed. They really don't want transformation to happen. Folks that fight income inequality. And you go down the list, racism, sexism, ostracizing of LGBTQ+, all of those things. As you insert yourselves into those projects, whatever the project is, you can find a healing for yourself, maybe. An understanding that you are far greater than you thought you could be. And it's all because of the love of Christ. That's what Christians would say. I'm not sure about Muslims, but that's what we would say. That's what Jesus asked us to do. That sounds like a sermon now, I'm trying to admit. Has anybody got other examples or experiences that help them step out bravely into a world that you were not at all comfortable with? I think I saw a hand go up.
Friendship Place. Not only do we feed people, but we also have parenting classes and job interview training and help getting jobs. And when somebody comes and graduates and says, I got a job, that is a huge transition.
And it makes it just maybe a little easier to see the light of Christ in them as you see it in yourself.
Yeah, I like it over there.
Yeah. Fabulous. My wife, yes, sir.
I was going to take this opportunity to put in a little plug for PFLAG, which is in the bulletin, and a number of people have asked me about that. PFLAG is something that I and a few others in the community, not necessarily attached to this church, we got started not quite a year ago, half a year or so ago, officially started this organization which works on advocacy and support for LGBTQ people. And the reason that we got started was because we knew, we could see and experience firsthand challenges especially faced by LGBTQ youth in the community. At this point, I think we are now working with our 12th child, person under 18, who has been kicked out of their house because they identify as gay or lesbian or trans or something like that. So there's a real problem with that. For myself as a gay man, this has been an amazing opportunity for transformation because I can see that we can provide this space for young people to really flourish in ways that they're not necessarily finding at school or at other churches and things like that. And so to be able to watch these people, come out of these kind of tragic circumstances And it's usually a pretty bumpy road. I mean, it's not easy for anyone who's going through that. But to help them along the way so then we can see them helping others is a huge window into this process of transformation. Even if it's not a capital M ministry of Holy Cross, it's definitely a small M ministry of my own. So,
Folks, it's those small M ministries that really make the difference. Emma Rose.
Kind of going off what Father Ryan said, I'm part of something called Happening, which is a youth retreat led by youth for youth, and it's at Camp St. Christopher's in Charleston. And we've been recruiting candidates, which are the youth that we kind of run this retreat for. And I've been recruiting, and there's one child in Pawleys Island who, there's like a story that goes wrong with it. My friend, she's a part of a church here in Pawleys that calls himself Episcopalian, and she's part of their youth. And she brought a friend who was transitioning from a girl to a boy to that youth. And the youth leader removed her from all leadership in the youth, made her sign a covenant saying that being gay and trans is a sin, and kicked her out of the youth. Being someone that has been always welcomed in the Episcopal youth, I wanted to reach out to the girl and the boy and let them know that the Episcopal youth is not like that. That is not what we represent, and that is not how we want anyone to be treated. So I'm inviting them to Happening and just seeing that they could be invited into a group that will always love them for who they are and who they love and whoever they want to be is something that's really important that I know the Episcopal youth and Episcopal Church wants to get across.
Amen to that.
Amen. Does anybody, has anybody participated in a gay pride parade? How did you feel the first time you ever participated in a gay pride parade?
It was amazing. One of the most amazing things, we went to Atlanta actually, because where we lived at the time in North Carolina didn't have such things. But we went to Atlanta, and I'll never forget the angels. We had this group of people who were dressed as angels with complete wings. And there was, of course, on this one corner, there was a screaming group of people against the whole parade. And these angels went up in front of them as the parade came by, spread their wings and blocked them. It was the most, it gives me goosebumps today. Just to talk
They
about
came to
that.
Knoxville.
Did they come to
Yes, they
Knoxville?
came to Knoxville.
They came to DC too.
And they sheltered the bad to allow the pride parade go by. And that was so telling to me, and it struck such a chord, because I thought, you know, and what you're doing, inviting that trans person to come to your youth group is absolutely fabulous, because I cannot tell you how mind-blowing it is to have your family tell you that you're no longer one of their children. The people that brought you up and you thought was going to be there for you forever, so to speak, we all want our parents to acknowledge us and accept us. It's all of a sudden decide just because you love somebody different or you don't feel right in your own skin to throw you out on the street and make you homeless. I just can't even begin to tell you how horrible that is. So, just saying thank you for doing that. That's fantastic. And what you do too, Ryan.
I also remember, I remember my first women's march also. And I had a sign that said, "I'm with her," and arrows pointing in every direction. And I was surrounded, I think in Knoxville that day there might have been 100,000 people, women and allies, marching proudly to say, it ain't right. It's not right what we're doing to women. And what we're and every other group was there also. The Black Lives Matter, the LGBTQ community. Because as much as they've been beaten down, They realized that other folks were being beaten down too, and so they were right there. That is transformational service. And it wasn't a 501c3. It wasn't attached to any particular church. It was a community rising up together. And I was transformed by it because I didn't think in Knoxville, Tennessee, this would be possible.
That's amazing, 100,000 people in Knoxville?
I may have overstated a little bit. I know that the idea was to gather in one space and walk down the sidewalk of the main street in Knoxville, which strangely enough is called Gay Street. That is true. And it spread out into the whole street and on the both sidewalks, and was like a tsunami on this march. And the best thing about it is my brothers and sisters at the Knoxville Police Department, which they could have done bad things. They parted and let them go. Now, I'm not sure they could have stopped them if they tried, but there might have been real harm done. And they parted and let them go, and folks were thanking the police officers for what they were doing, and I guarantee you those police officers were transformed. They were a little less quick to make the joke about the woman on the street or the gay person or whatever. And that is transformation. And I was transformed being there again. Now, I have an advantage. In my house, we raised 2 daughters, one of whom was gay. She didn't change, by the way. She died. So, yeah, it is changed. You're right. She transformed also. So, I mentioned some questions, and I'm going to give them out to you, and you don't have to answer them out loud. Oh.
I have where I was the recipient of definitely transformational prayer service from everybody here in many places. 6 years ago today, and over the next 16 days, I was in the hospital, developed viral and bacterial pneumonia packed into both of my lungs. I had ARDS, I had sepsis, my kidneys and my liver failed, I had blood clots in my lungs and in my legs. I was put on the ventilator for 10 days and got a feeding tube. The kids were brought in because they didn't think I was going to make it. I just remember darkness, and then I heard Patty's voice, and light came, and over the next month, no blood clots, my heart's fine, my lungs are fine, everything healed. And, it was prayers and I just thought I'd share
It
that.
lifted you up?
Yes, and changed me completely.
Wow. I don't know that my little questions are going to do it. But I'm going to throw them out there anyway, and I brought copies if you want a copy of it. You don't have to take a copy, but if you want a copy of these questions to take home and reflect. I start off with a statement with that question that's asked in the baptismal covenant. Will you seek and serve Christ in all persons, loving your neighbor as yourself? So question number one, can or should you participate in outreach without getting your hands a little dirty and maybe your heart a little bruised? Number two, can or should you participate in outreach and service without relishing the work of your hands and your heart? Are you more comfortable with corporate outreach, or is personal outreach more your style or passion? Or do you do both? And I would say probably most of us do both. Number four, the bane of Episcopalians everywhere. Is evangelism part of your outreach and service? Should it be part of your outreach? And how comfortable are you as an evangelist? I have only recently become comfortable with walking up to complete strangers and saying, "You appear to be in pain. May I pray for you?" Not, "I'm going to pray for you," or "Here's a prayer," and dump it on them, but "May I?" And can you name what's bothering you? Are you able to name it? Do you want to name it?
You know, that's a really good question, because used to be, I would be, I hate to say this, but I'd be almost horrified when somebody would ask me, "Will you pray with me?" or "Will you say a prayer for me?" This church has really transformed me, because now I have people in a situation where they ask for prayer sometimes, and they just say, "Will you pray with me?" And I will.
It used to be the word Christian was a bad word.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I'm not sure, I don't mention Jesus. I mention a loving and creative God, and go from there. And if they don't want that, then they probably aren't going to ask me for prayer anyway.
There you
All
go.
right? They're going to ask me for $1. And even giving that $1 might be transformative, by the way.
I was right behind an automobile accident one day, and it was a young teenage boy. And this group of men in a truck had just dragged him out and left him there. And he was scared to death. Young teenager asked me, "Will you pray with me?" Because I just, yes. And I wrote everything down for his dad and what I had observed and everything. But that really touched me, for a teenager to ask that.
Question number 5. I'm almost done, by the way, with the questions. Does the nature of your outreach change over time? And what about your ability and or comfort to deeply reflect on that outreach? I'm 70 years old now. I can't do everything I used to do. I'm just not able to do it all. But there's still an awful lot I can do. Part of it's being here. Part of it's being willing to be in the diocese and assist the bishop in any way I can. And finally, how does your outreach and the reflection that may come without outreach promote internal healing or your connection to the love of Christ? You may come up with many, many more questions. This is just a jumping off point. And maybe these are questions that you put in your prayers. I don't know. Use them as you will. Or don't use them at all. You might use them to lie on the bird cage. I don't know. To wrap up, one of my favorite writers / theologians / novelists, whatever, Frederick Meekness, wrote this: "The best moments any of us have as human beings are those moments when for a little while it is possible to escape the squirrel cage of being me into the landscape of being us." And with that, I'll say amen.
Amen.
Questions, comments, concerns? That's what we always used to say in the military. Questions, comments, concerns?
Thank you, Lee.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Well, and here are the questions rather than handing them out. They're right here, help yourself. And I won't look to see how many are gone.
And Ryan, you went over the details before class, at the beginning of class.
Yes, but I'll say it again because some people did walk in late. If you are undergoing one of the rites of Christian initiation, whether that's baptism, confirmation, reception, reaffirmation of your baptismal vows, you should be on this sheet and the information should be correct. So if you have not had a chance to look at this and you are undergoing one of those things, on Easter Sunday when the bishop is here, please do take a look. The other thing too is that for those of you who are undergoing one of those ceremonies, we will have a rehearsal Saturday before Easter, April 16th. That's at 10